Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast brought to you by Tacticam. Tacticam is by far the easiest way to begin filming your hunts. Whether it's the budget-friendly solo or the 4K 5.0, Tacticam has something for everyone. Check them out at tacticam.com. This year we've also partnered with Spartan Forge, and my God, I can't imagine what it's like for Bill right now. Everything was submitted September 15th, and it's still not on the App Store. I've talked with them a little bit via text, super busy, but I have been able to get early access to the app. So for you guys that are wondering, so Spartan Forge is artificial intelligence for the deer woods using collared deer studies, historical data, military intelligence, coupled with your deer and mapping and everything. So I've got this open in front of me. So just to give you a little bit of information about what is available on the app, because what's available online is somewhat it lacks the bells and whistles. So Garrett Brawl has a great video on breaking down kind of all the things that Spartan Forge does. And the pro staff for this, Andy May, Taylor Chamberlain, Parker McDonald, Greg Litzinger, the list goes on. Tons of great hunters putting all of their input in here on what they want. But it's got, your deer forecast, sunrise, sunset, pressure, moon phase. It's got forecast as far as if the deer are going to be in their core area, transition area, if it's going to be variable. It's showing you, like I say, moon phase. It has all of the information for the forecast for your area, including precipitation, wind, and then it's got historical data as far as wind, temperatures, precipitation, and in the intel section, so wherever you're at, it tells you how much public land there are, the largest tracts that are near you. It has the number of hunters, the average deer harvest, deer populations, private deer harvested, public land, antler lists. It breaks all this down along with the records, Boone and Crockett, and then it also has information on what to look for as far as browse. So it's got woody browse, herbaceous browse, hard and soft mast, and it's got lists along with pictures of all of the things that you can look for in your area that the deer are. And that's just a list of some of the things. It also has many different maps, all sorts of that stuff. So for you guys that are anxiously waiting, everybody is looking. I just updated the App Store, not out yet. It looks like they're waiting on one last little change. You can check that out at spartanforge.ai. or in the App Store, Google Play. Keep refreshing just like everybody else is for Spartan Forge. Super cool. Very excited to test it out here throughout this season as we're started. And again, you can check them out at spartanforge.ai. Real quick, we've got 2 new Patreons this month, or over this past week. Nathan Bartow out of Illinois, and then Rick Larson from Wisconsin. And so Patreon is a crowdfunding for creators. Basically, it helps us with the overhead costs of this show, everything that we do, gear testing. I just bought the XOP saddle stuff that came out, the platform, as well as their harness saddle, which needs a little bit of improvement, but I really like the idea behind it. And the price point is there, but it needs a little bit of tweaking. But anyways, it helps us to get our hands on as much stuff as we can, so we have informed opinions on these things as we're answering your questions on all of this stuff. All of the podcast recording equipment. If you saw our Instagram where I shot the nail through my thumb, building my studio in my basement to up our video game, and that is really where we're headed with this. I want these to be interactive podcasts. I want to interact more with you, the listener. And so, whatever above and beyond that goes towards growing the show, making it better, making it the best that we can, putting out the best content. And then we do giveaways as well. So, we're partnered with Tacticam. They're giving away one of their LR spotters, which is a standalone recording device that hooks right on to any of your spotting scopes. You zoom in with your spotting scope, and then you can digitally zoom in and enhance, record right on that. Really super cool, and they're giving away one of those. Spartan Forge is giving away 1-year subscription to their service. We're also partnered with Basemap. So Basemap, if you're not using any GPS mapping software, you are truly missing out, or you're only staying on your one little piece of property or whatever. Basemap is the best value in mapping. $30 for the entire year, and you can use our code Chronicles, save 20%, so it makes it $2 per month for the entire country. They give you fire data. We're getting ready to go. I'm getting ready to head out to Colorado. I've been watching the fires out there. Been doing all of my mapping. There's just tons of cool features. They have a free version that you can try out there, and definitely, Basemap is a great option for GPS mapping. Definitely check them out. And so they're giving away one of their pro plans, as well as a swag pack with a shirt and a hat. Zinger Fletchings, our friends over there, they're giving away one of their test packs. So they're 3D printed compression fit fletchings for guys that don't have time to fletch arrows. They just slide right on. Shoot really, really well. I've been shooting broadheads with those lately, not having any issues. Actually having more issues with my vanes than I am with the zingers. And, of course, John says we got to adjust this and do that, but the zingers are flying just fine for me. I don't need to be shooting two different style of arrows, so we're going to stick to the zingers. And then for us, so we are going to give this away probably right at the next podcast launch. So probably next week, Wednesday, we'll see. We'll be entering into the fourth quarter. So this third quarter, we are giving away another saddle package, and true to form all the way across the board. We're starting out with the Latitude Method 2-piece saddle. Their new design with the magnets is incredible. The Trophy Line EDP platform and the Trophy Line ropes. So Trophy Line's got an 8mm rope, very similar to the tethered 8mm ropes. Super packable, super lightweight, just awesome gear. And then to get up the tree, the sticks we did the review and the video on, those tethered one sticks that aren't available to anybody right now, we're going to be giving those away. So you're getting tethered one sticks, Trophy Line EDP, Trophy Line ropes, and a Latitude saddle. So if you're thinking about how expensive it is, go back a couple podcasts, how expensive it is to get into saddle hunting, this is your chance to win that. Just by supporting a show that you're already listening to. So you've got basically one more week to sign up for that. And who knows? I don't know what we're going to give away for the fourth quarter. Shoot me a message if there's something that you think that we should look into, or something that you would like to win, or one of the major things that is holding you back. A big purchase where you really want to buy it, but it's just too much money. That's kind of where we want to stick with these giveaways because we really appreciate it, and we want it to be worthwhile and make sure that we're giving back just as much as we're getting from you guys, the listener. And real quick, over this past weekend, I did go to the Genesis 3D event, and I got to meet Dano. Got to meet the Amsteel guy, the guys from Tuber Saddles. Got to see the updates on those. Really slick saddle. I had one of the prototypes, and they've changed a few different things on that. But very slick and awesome guys over there. So definitely check those out. Made right here in Michigan. Michigan guys, just like us. So real cool. And, guys that I see all the time, the guys from Overdrive Outdoors, Josh, check out his podcast. Super great guy. We're gonna get him saddle hunting here. He's the one who has my original case pack. So, Josh, I know you're listening. We appreciate the support, and we'll have to get you on here and talk some coyote hunting. They got great guys over there at Overdrive Outdoors. Publicly challenged. I mean, these events, like I say, you can't see any of this stuff, all in one spot side by side. And what Austin did over there was really great. And it's going to be an annual event, it sounds like, so keep your eyes open for that. But any of these events, even if you're not a saddle hunter, just a mobile hunter, to see, with the Amsteel guy being there and getting to see the different Amsteel products, what he's doing, all of the different climbing methods, all in one spot is just, invaluable. And then the people as well. So, again, really, really good event. And you should definitely, if there's something like that in your area, definitely take the time to check it out. But this podcast here is, we had a listener, Dave from Missouri, send me an email a while back about the younger generation and kind of getting their information from podcasts and from social media, YouTube, guys that don't really have hunting mentors, and about etiquette in the woods. And there was this really long, super long email, and we touched on a few of the points that were in the email, as far as like when you encounter somebody in the woods, what to do in the parking lot, leaving your stuff on public land, hunting fence lines, all of those sorts of topics we covered. Kevin's working a ton of hours, and we had to kind of keep the duration of the podcast a little bit shorter rather. But a great topic, a great listen as we go into, Michigan's going to open up here on Friday. So just great information as you head into the woods. And we just really appreciate everybody listening. I think you're going to really enjoy this podcast. It's one of those topics that just makes you think about all of the situations that you've been in the woods, and maybe you're on both sides of it. Maybe you're the asshole, or maybe you're the good guy. The bigger man who walks away or picks up somebody else's trash or whatever. But a really great episode, and I think you guys are going to really take something away from it. As always, thanks for listening. Enjoy the episode. All right, everybody, Adam back with another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. And tonight we have the host of probably, maybe it's a podcast that some of you have come to hear of as one of the more controversial podcasts in the last little bit. And it's kind of really ruffled some feathers, opened some eyes. Being a Michigan boy here, I've always been familiar with the Rampolla buck. But we're talking tonight with obviously Kevin Vistisen from the Deer Hunter podcast. How are you doing tonight, Kevin?
I heard I was listening to a podcast with Hal Blood on my way home today, and that guy always makes me chuckle, and he had a good one. He said if I was doing any better, there'd be two of me.
So that podcast series that you've got from the Rampolla buck, and that's not the topic of tonight's podcast, but I'd be remiss if we didn't bring it up. Did you expect it to go the way that it has?
I didn't really have expectations. I went into it honestly with my best investigative journalist approach. Everything that I can understand and know about investigative journalism is to not have expectations, like just look for things that can be proven, like be proven, what can be proven and what can't be proven. So, I was younger when that happened. And honestly, I mean, I saw the pictures and all that, but I didn't pay in-depth attention to it. And I don't know when it was that I got real interested in it. Obviously, it was recent in the last year or two. But I think the more and more I looked at that picture and realized that it was the landscape, resembled the landscape of the place that I love to hunt, I started wondering, what's possible. Because I have seen some giant deer. I mean, there's a lot of people that shoot big deer up in northern Michigan that don't have social media or have any interest in, they're not driven to do it, but for the opportunity to share it with the world. I've seen some giant deer, Boone and Crockett, Pope and Young, you name it. They come out of those woods up there. So I did start to wonder what the possibility was that guy had, killed a potential world record up there, because there's not a lot of record book bucks that come out of northern Michigan. And so I didn't really have expectations, to be honest with you.
And so for people who aren't familiar with the story, can you give us just maybe like a 1 or 2 sentence synopsis of what the deal is?
The Cliff Notes version of it is back in the mid-90s, this gentleman by the name of Mitch Rumpola, supposedly, pictures surfaced of him with this abnormally large and wide deer with super tall tines that carried mass all through it. Potential world record. They claimed the deer was over 200 inches. And it was, I think, even from anybody's perspective, you looked at that picture, and whether it was just the sheer size of those antlers or the oddities of them, is that it drew attention and it kind of made you wonder. And then there was a lot of controversy around the animal. And then he failed to basically prove legally that was the world record deer. And then he kind of went recluse. He got a lot of pressure, and a lot of people wanted answers. And he just kind of, there wasn't any kind of official statement from him. It just, as far as I know and can track down, he disappeared and stopped talking to basically everybody. He used to be a very social person. He was running all the deer hunting circuits, going to the shows, had some partnerships, and then just like that, he was kind of gone. So not the easiest guy to find a bunch of information on, I can assure you that. But so the controversy lives on, essentially. To this day, there's 2 camps: people that believe that it's real, people that believe that it's fake. And the people that are on each side are very opinionated. And I don't know even if you had a video, showing that what had exactly happened, that you could convince somebody otherwise. They're so set. People have believed this now for, decades, or not believed it for decades. So yeah, it's still wildly popular. I did greatly and grossly underestimate the popularity of the story. I can assure you of that. I had no clue the amount of people that would specifically sort that or seek that information out. So.
And so to that point, like, what's been the response on either side?
Definitely brought some facts to the table and some points of view, and some like breakdowns, some long format conversation and breakdowns around the specifics and what can you prove and what can't you prove. So there's been a lot of people messaging in, just asking up, follow-up questions, a lot of follow-up questions, like, hey, you guys mentioned this, what about this? Or, hey, and I got a lot of hot tips. A lot of people messaging in saying, hey, I know Rick that lives over on Timber Road, and he used to cut firewood with Mitch, and his dad owns a bow shop, and we see them every now and then, and here's his phone number. He said it's okay to call him. So, there's been a few people maybe that have like had a bit of hostility when they messaged in, like, you don't know what you're talking about, or something along those lines. I've got just a couple of those, and they've been extremely entertaining. And then a lot of people just messaging in saying like, hey, the direction that you guys went with the conversation, I support that. Wondered why people never talked about that before. Makes sense. So very interactive subject, unlike anything else I've ever put out. I mean, times 100, literally. Moved us from the 60th spot in the outdoor and wilderness to the 13th over the course of the 4-part series that we've done so far over the summer. So big needle mover as far as like people wanting to know, really like seeking out and wanting to know about it.
Well, that's huge, and I mean, from that, it's almost like, and then congratulations on moving up that far.
Hey, congratulations to Mitch, right? It's his story. I'm just talking about it. So it's he was that popular of a guy, and that topic is that popular. It's not really yeah, it was kind of an awkward thing to look at and see and think about, like, oh man, how do I how do I keep this trajectory or maintain this type of energy, through the show? Because obviously when you're investing a bunch of time to do something like that, you want it going out to as many people possible and having as strong of an audience as possible. So it was super interesting. It's still super interesting. I had a guest in just a few days ago, my friend Scott Zig from...
Yeah, Scott's a great dude.
Yeah, I know that you know him. And he was here this week, and me and him drank some beers and some whiskey. And we talked about some of the questions, because he's been following along the whole time too, and we've been exchanging texts and messages, and I've been basically, my response to him is like, wait till the next episode. I haven't been trying to like give a bunch away to people. I've been definitely trying to drive them to the conversation. I have gotten a lot of questions that I could answer, and I've tried to answer them on the show to the best of our abilities to share that with everybody. So, but anyways, what I was getting at is that some of the most popular questions that have been asked into specifics that really tie a lot of the story together, we discussed on this week's podcast that I'm going to edit and try to get out here after I wrap up with you this evening, because I have a super early start at work in the morning, and I'm not going to have much time to do it in the morning. I would have to probably be getting up at like 2:30, 3:30 in the morning. So I'm going to try to get that here done tonight, and it's going to answer, I think, a lot of questions that people have been asking as of recently. Plus, I haven't put one out in probably like a month or 6 weeks, and I haven't even talked about it because I have been so overwhelmed with my life, with work and everything else, that it's kind of been a scramble the last couple of weeks for me to get the podcast out. So because of that, I really have failed to kind of give an update, and we do that on this week's show. So
awesome. But what I was going to say is, it's like, with all this rise of podcasts, and not just hunting podcasts, but this is like literally like true crime meets deer hunting in some sort of a way, like you alluded to, like the investigative journalism portion of it.
One of the listeners kind of hit the nail on the head right when we started doing it, right after like the first episode. He messaged in, he's like, dude, this is the JFK of deer hunting. And I'm like, yeah, it's probably not too far off with that. So
right, cover up, suspense, polarized, all the things. So, and Kevin, your episode, I didn't even think about that when we scheduled this, but your podcasts come out on Fridays, correct? So
Yes, I've been doing that as consistently as possible for, yeah, I don't know, at least the last 6 months, maybe the last year. I don't know, man, when I switched to. I used to just kind of try to get one out a week. And then for some reason, I seem to have been did it at the front end of the week on Tuesdays. I think oftentimes because I would record stuff on the weekend, and Mondays are usually long days for me. So Tuesday kind of found its way into my spot. But now for a while, we've been a Friday release. I missed a couple here as of recently, just super overwhelmed with everything else that I have going on outside of, hosting the podcast. So, but yeah, try to be as consistent as possible and have something that everybody can listen to on Friday morning and kind of walk themselves into the weekend. I try to make it, an attachment to, hey, this is the weekend coming and Deer Hunter Podcast will have an episode out.
awesome. Well, so you had talked about hunting up north and seeing these big bucks, and kind of like that's kind of what you do as well. Like you're more of a big woods, public land. You mix it up. You hunt kind of all over. But we had a listener maybe 6 months ago or so send me a big, nice, like long email talking about a topic that he wanted covered. And he says, new younger hunters maybe that don't have mentors or anything, they look to a lot of social media, podcasts, YouTube to kind of drive them in their kind of how to hunt, learn how to hunt. And that's all well and good. But the one thing that's getting kind of remiss is the hunting etiquette or ethics. And he's not talking about like frontal shots or, are you using the right equipment for the job type thing, but more of like while you're in the woods and you encounter other hunters or parking lot etiquette. So I thought it would be good to talk to you, someone who, kind of lives and dies by public land and getting out there, and you see all the tree stands and the guys in the parking lots. And I'd imagine you see maybe even more, I don't know, of the bad side of it, I think, because you do a lot of rifle hunting where with us in bow season, I don't know, the bow hunter numbers are super high, and you bow hunt too. But I just think of all the bad experiences I've had rifle hunting on public land. So I thought it was a good topic.
Yeah, sure, man. It is. It's an important one.
So he had a big list, and I sent you the email, but I kind of had my own like kind of thoughts on things that I wanted to kind of talk about. Like, so one of the things that gets often talked about, and, Kevin has what I will call affectionately a band of merry men that he runs around with. And if you're new to the Deer Hunter podcast, check out any of the Black Velvet Fest episodes, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
You need like a disclaimer on that.
But so one of your buddies there, Ryan, I think he's got like something up his ass about tree stands left on public land. And I don't think, it doesn't matter how far you go back in the woods, you're going to walk past tree stands or you're going to see them. You're going to find old tree stands. And that's one thing for me that's like, how do you feel? Or I guess, what are your thoughts on trees, like leaving tree stands on public land?
Honestly, what I would like to see, it would be I can assure you that my opinion is extremely controversial, and but I would love to see the culture be that this younger generation takes it upon themselves. Like, we have such an opportunity to be stewards of the land. Our age deer hunters have access to information that no one has ever had, right? Mm-hmm. And we're dialed in more so than any like entity of the state is as far as like a collective group. And now we have a tool where we can organize through like media, you know. I would like to see the culture change, one, for people to stop doing that, because it's an ineffective way, really, honestly, is to hunt. There's better gear now. Yeah, you're going to spend a little bit more money, but you're going to be more effective. And then throughout the course of time, if you invest in like cast aluminum stands and higher quality gear, and then obviously hunting mobile, you don't leave much of your equipment in the woods. It's pretty rare. But, you know, if you factor into the age of a steel, and people do sometimes take care of them and they will last a very long time, but more often than not, people don't. They deteriorate quickly. People just leave them all over out. I mean, it's crazy, right? Like, it's frustrating. There's like a big majority probably of the trash that you're going to find in like in northern Michigan woods is going to be from hunters, which is kind of disappointing. And so I would like to see the culture shift a little bit. And I think it naturally will, as like the way we deer hunt. One, I just would feel guilty now doing that. Like, and I don't know if that's just me getting older or the people that I run with. I know plenty of older people that don't, you know, make me feel the way that I do. They got their spot. They keep their stuff out there. It is what it is. But one, I'd like to see people stop doing that. Hopefully the next generation doesn't hunt in that capacity and are a little more conscious about just leaving garbage out in the woods. Like, I understand you want to build a blind out there. You want to be comfortable. You want to haul a tree stand in there so you can hunt, but you're less enthused after the season and you don't want to go out there and get it. And honestly, I'm at the point, like, I've seen so much of abuse that I'm just personally sick of it. And I would have zero guilt. I would actually applaud anyone. I would shake their hand that goes through the effort that after the season, if people leave stuff up illegally, take it to a recycling yard and get what you can for it. Put it out for your scrap guy, keep it for yourself, give it to a young hunter. But yeah, I don't know why we're going to sit here and bitch and complain that the DNR's not doing it. I mean, why don't we just take it upon ourselves? It's there. It's illegal. It's leaving trash in the woods if you are leaving it past a date. Now, if somebody's maintaining something and, you know, they're like loosening the chain or some of it, like, I look at it and I'm like, that's not negatively impacting anything. You know what I mean? But when I go and I see a tree stand that is just like the chain is grown into the tree, they drove a bunch of spikes in the tree to get up there, and then on top of it, there's trash under the tree. You know, there's like an old can of buck bomb or bags from putting piles of bait out, and you're just leaving trash there and you're fucking the tree up. I don't, excuse my language, but I'm not cool with that. So like, if anybody that would go through the effort to get that thing out of there, I'd be more on that person's side than I would on the side of the guy that's essentially just abusing it and kind of makes us all look kind of bad, in my opinion. You know, collectively as a group, we have to be responsible. So that's how I feel about it, man.
Do you think somewhat of that is like on a part of the industry? And I don't know that you could ever like do this, but we talked about it a little bit like on our last podcast, or one of the last podcasts, when we were talking about like saddle hunting versus stands versus like preset setups. And like, you know, we just kind of joked that after the season, like at Menards, it's hard to walk by a set of like climbing sticks or one of the like old, you know, what are they, like big game lock-ons, those metal ones for like clearance for $25 or $20. And those are the ones that are getting left in the woods because it's not worth, I mean, some of the spots that I go, like, it wouldn't be worth $25 for me to trek out there in knee deep snow to take it down. And it's almost like if you had a quality stand out there, you'd want to go get it because it did cost, a couple $100 or something like that.
For the opportunity to go and hunt out there all year, I think it's just like respectful to invest the work. You get to do all that, just take it down after the season. And now I want to be clear about what I said. Like, I'm talking about like it illegally now is not, it's not legally on the land going by the rules. I don't know what the exact dates are, but by, the springtime or whatever, you have to have them out of there, and then what they can go back in at a certain period of time. And I should know that window, but I do not. So if you just play by those rules, you're bringing your stuff in anyways. You can repaint it, put new straps on it. You can maintain your stuff. And I'm not like talking about like, hey, if you know that is a great spot. And I think a lot of it too used to have to do with obviously everybody, the whole culture of the state was hunting over bait. So, if you had stands set up with bait piles, you weren't moving around and trying to follow food sources and deer patterns like we try to hunt. I feel like now I know people were doing it, but obviously a lot more people were just running bait piles. So I think a lot of that stuff was like, hey, we're just going to haul it out here. It's going to be a ton of work, but we know there's deer in the spot. And we're going to put the apples right here at 20 yards, and that's where the deer are going to stand,
Oh yeah.
So, but I just don't think it's that much to ask to like, I've come across everything, man. I've come to where people have literally just ran like a quarter acre of timber down with a chainsaw to build like a log blind in a swamp. And it's just like, this is crazy. Like, this is crazy. And, the whole like leaving trash, just, my God, nothing chaps my ass more than, finding trash in the woods. I can't mentally understand how and why somebody would do it. Like, I would just feel so not right, you know? It's a weird thing, and I can't get past it. I have a hard time understanding people that, are willing to do that. So for that reason, I don't have much sympathy for them at all.
And so some of it is, like you said, kind of like to try to hold your spot or like be like, okay, somebody's hunting here, etc. And I totally feel the same way about trash. And I think it's kind of like, I don't know, I think with our hunting style and like the culture of mobile hunting, like you don't want anybody, or especially anybody who cares about that, you don't want the deer to know that you were there. You want to leave as little trace, as little, disruption there as possible. At least that's the way that I feel. But like when you're going in there and for these new guys, and I've heard, and it seems to pop up on Facebook a lot, like you go into somewhere and there's a stand there, and people talk about like hunting other people's stands. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, because that's a question that comes up often.
Well, I think the rules are pretty clear, right? If you leave a tree stand out in the woods and you're not hunting in it, somebody else can legally, right?
Right, but legally versus like etiquette, ethically, etc.
Yeah, I couldn't see ever doing it. And if I had like, let's just say that under this scenario, like a lot of times when I go up and gun hunt, the day or two before opener, I'll hang 2 or 3 stands, and those stands will be there for the course of a week. So if I came and so a guy was just sitting in it, I'd be like, seriously, like, what are you doing? Uh, you know, I don't even know how I would take it. Obviously I would assume he would get down right away, but if some guy wouldn't, obviously there'd be a confrontation. So I would never envision seeing myself do that. I think, I'll hunt on top of somebody's spot. Like if I know that they're not hunting it efficiently, or I know that they're not hunting it, or I know that they have private land that butts up to the state land. So I know that ladder stand is just there to deter me from hunting here. I know those people don't actually hunt here. just given that I know them and I know the circumstances. So, I mean, I'll hunt, 5 yards off of maybe where somebody has a ladder stand hung, and I'm there on a different day for a different reason. Like, I don't assume that I would ever encounter them when I'm out there because I have enough information, or I feel like I have enough information that I'm not going to run into anyone. So there is that. And then, I've had people kind of do the same thing. I would never walk up on somebody and see them hunting and set up on them. Oh, I would never do that. But I've had people do that to me, and I think it's awkward. I wouldn't do it personally, but I've had it done to me.
Yeah. Now, I guess how do you feel about that in a situation? And I feel like if you hunt enough, you're gonna run into this, and you're truly mobile. It's happened to me out of state for sure. You go into somewhere, you scout around, you go in the dark, and you get up your tree or whatever, and then somebody comes in, and gets up a tree because they had a stand over there that you didn't see 100 yards away or whatever, or they left their stand in there the night before or whenever, and then they come by. It's one of those things, like, how do you feel in that situation, or when you've been there and somebody set up with you and you say that it's awkward? Is it like do you feel like it's like an ego thing, like to just stay there, or are you like, fuck this, I'm getting down and I'm going somewhere else, especially if it's like their preset stand?
Yeah, there's a ton of variables. Obviously, it depends on how much time you have. Like, how much time do you have? Do you have time to get down and relocate and think that you're going to be in a better situation, or do you just need to sit tight and hope that that didn't negatively? Or, I mean, obviously, if somebody came in and walked like right into the bedding area that I'm hunting, I'd be like, all right, this is probably pretty pointless. But if somebody just came through, that's maybe a little bit of a different story. I honestly, I haven't had very many situations where I've run into people ever. It's happened a few times. I kind of feel like every time that it happened, I knew that there was the potential for it to happen. Like, I knew somebody else was hunting back in here, or I knew, somebody was had a stand back in there, that was active. As simple as that. Like, oh, like there's somebody else back here. But a lot of people drive a long ways up there to hunt, so they might have a stand and only hunt it a couple times all year. So there's also, like I said, a lot of times where I'm hunting right by a stand where I just fully don't expect or assume that I'm going to see anybody. But the only couple times that I've had it happen, I don't get too worked up about it. Like, the whole, like you said about an ego thing, I'm not really. I mean, the last situation that I had this happen was maybe 2 years ago now. I think it was 2 years ago. And I went up late October by myself on a bow hunt. And I went up Friday, I think, after work. And I hunted Saturday morning, and I did not see a deer. And I was like, sitting a rut spot, but it clearly was like no pre-rut activity yet. So maybe this was October 20th timeframe window, something like that. Didn't see any deer in the morning. Knew I only had that evening and the next morning. And I got down. I looked around. I was like, dude, there's no deer tracks in here. There's no fresh deer sign. There's no shit. Like, there's not deer in here right now. They're somewhere else. So I got down, got in the truck. I knew where there was some oak flats about 15 minutes north of where I was. I drove to them, drove off the road, and I walked in. I started seeing deer tracks immediately. There was acorns everywhere. I saw 2 deer. A couple elk ripped bugles off while I was scouting, and I just instantly got super excited. So I went right back to the truck, got my stand, came back in, hunted that night, and it was just one of the nicest evening sits that I ever had, sitting out on this big oak flat and listening to elk bugle all night. And I saw a handful of does work this hillside, but they were probably 75 yards out from where I sat. Now, mind you, I went in there completely blind. I'd never been in there before. And it's a big oak flat, I mean, acres of oaks. And so I was like, man, I just got to shoot from the hip and go with the topography and think that if a deer comes through here, they're going to naturally move through this little bench. And it turned out the next bench over was wildly popular, and it was only like 75 yards from where I sat. And so my thought process was, well, in the morning, I'm going to get in there and just move right over there, and hopefully it'll work out. I didn't have any deer come by me that night. But that next morning, I got in there super early because I knew deer were going to be in there feeding on acorns, and I assumed that they were just going to hang out in there throughout the day. So I got in like an hour and a half early, moved my stuff. I'm sitting there. It's, just starting to go from where it's black in the woods to where you can start to make out some images,
Mm-hmm.
And I look, and from a long distance away, I walk a fairly large drainage for northern Michigan up into this spot. And I look down the drainage, and there's a flashlight or a headlamp coming right up the drainage. I'm like, I've been sitting now for an hour, dead quiet. And here comes a headlamp, like right up straight towards where I am. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me, And my last morning, I knew I was in the right spot. I'm like, this guy's going to come walk. I'm watching him, hoping that he's going to do something, but he's getting closer and closer. So I pull out my headlamp and I just kind of flash him some, little strobes like, hey, alert, alert, someone's right here. And, thinking how I would have reacted, I probably wouldn't have walked right straight towards them, but that's what this person continued to do. So I'm like, maybe they're looking down at the ground and they don't see me, so I'm like really hitting it now. And they're like coming, and they finally get like within like 30 yards of me, and I'm like, hey, and they're like, yeah, we see you, like all arrogant. And I'm like, huh, all right. I'm like, you didn't fucking think to like maybe not walk right on top of me, And they didn't say anything. They just kept walking through. So I was like, I'm pissed, And I was contemplating like, what should I do, But by this time it's light enough where I can see them and they walk past where I am. And then I like calm down a little bit and I realized like I'm hunting a big chunk of timber. All these guys did is walk through. They really didn't walk through where I anticipated the deer walking through. So I'm not like super freaked out about where the direction of their ground scent is in correlation to where I think I'm going to shoot a deer at. So I didn't think it ruined my hunt. So within a pretty short period of time, I was just like, whatever. Those guys are assholes. But I learned a valuable lesson, right? At the same point in time, I'm clearly hunting northern Michigan, public land, and I'm not the only person that knows that deer love acorns in the fall, right? And this place was accessible. It was right off the road. It was clear as day that there was a bunch of deer in there. And these guys were local and they knew that. And honestly, they'd probably been hunting that spot, in hindsight, thinking about it, they probably have been hunting that spot for a long time. It was my first time in there. So they're probably thinking in their head, like, yeah, pound sand, dude. We've been hunting here for like 22 years. We know the deer are in here. Get out of here. Get lost. So when I think about it like that, if you just take the ego factor out of it, like everybody's, I don't know, there's two different conflicting sides there. And even though I personally wouldn't have continued to walk right through there, I just don't know. But I learned that I'm like, well, this isn't that great of a spot. because especially on a weekend when people are hunting, I'm going to run into people. Like, I learned that real quick. So I probably won't invest my time in that, given the fact that I can find a spot like that that's less accessible, where I think there's a better opportunity to not run into people. If those guys want that spot that bad, you can have it. You're probably not going to shoot any big deer in there during daylight. But if you want to go in there and shoot some does and some smaller bucks, that's probably a great spot to do it. And so anyways, I don't even know exactly if that answered the question that you asked me, but that is just the last experience. And I'll say that's the most negative one. I've had one other pretty negative one, and I didn't really feel like I was in the wrong on that one necessarily either, but I was maybe a little more asking to get put in the situation that I did. I knew it was a risky spot that I was kind of sitting in, and there was a chance that somebody would know I was there and potentially be worked up about it. So
no, I think that's a good perspective on the whole thing. Now it kind of leads into another thing, because maybe the spots that you are hunting or these areas aren't necessarily spots that have like parking lots, but it sounds like that spot in particular, those guys, do you think they probably saw your truck?
I'm sure they saw my truck, but where they saw my truck, they wouldn't have thought that they were going to see me, because I always park my truck at least a quarter mile up or down the road from where I'm going in and out. I don't typically want to tip anybody off to like, hey, why would a truck be in that spot? Like, why is he parking there? Like, even when I check cameras or anything, if a truck's coming down the road, dude, I'm like hopping in the ditch and pulling grass over me. Like, I do not like to be seen when I'm out hunting. So, I've parked my truck and walked 2.5 miles before, because I knew that this spot is just money. And one of the reasons that it's money is because nobody knows about it besides me to this point. And it's a consistent producer for me. So for that reason, I'll walk 2.5 miles to to get it. And a mile of that is just on a gravel road. I could cut a mile off of that walk just by parking where I go into the woods, but I don't.
So from that perspective, like, is that perhaps like a double-edged sword? Because some people, and like this listener Dave, he was talking about, like, if he sees somebody in like a small parking area or a pull off, he doesn't park his truck right next to him. He'll go to another area or something like that. Just being courteous. But it seems like in your case, especially if you're 2.5 miles down the road, like somebody could think that there's nobody hunting in there and walk right in on you, and it's like, what the fuck, dude? But like, nobody was parked there.
here's the reality of that. The best hunters in the areas, they see that truck there, they know. They're just, if you're hunting anywhere that like there's a local population, which everywhere in Michigan there is, and there's some guys there that hunt, and it's life for them, and they're woodsmen, and they'll see your truck there, and yeah, they're not going to come in and walk in on you, but as soon as you're gone, you go home on Sunday, that guy drives by there on his way home from work on Monday, he's walking in there to see what you're doing, see where you're hunting, see what you got going on. I've been with so many guys that like operate in that capacity, like the guys that I know that spend the most time in the woods, they want to know what's going on in the woods. And if they see a truck, there that they don't normally see, and it's obvious that it's hunting, right? It's got a real tree sticker on it, and it's there from like 2:00 in the afternoon till an hour after dark, right? It's real obvious the guy's hunting in there. Man, those those guys, and those guys are everywhere. They're gonna go in and see you know, what potentially is, if they have any interest in hunting in that area. And I feel like I'm competing with those guys when I go to that area. I'm super jealous that they live there, because the time that they have that I don't puts them so far ahead of me. So I'll have to do everything possible to like any edge that I can possibly have. And, if you're trying to hunt a bigger, older age class deer, which I'm always striving for during the season, and you're hunting in that manner, like those are the guys I'm competing with. So there's just no circumstance where I think it's good to park your truck there to say like, hey, this is where I am and where I'm hunting, and maybe you might want to take a look at it. It'd be like sharing my Onyx pins on Facebook.
That's another thing I had on my list was like blowing up spots. And I want to say like, with all of the guys putting their hunts on YouTube and putting like, discerning features, or, get one of the things that always kind of makes me chuckle is when guys put a picture of them and a nice buck in front of like the sign for the public land area. It would be like me shooting a big deer in front and then taking my picture in front of like the Manistee National Forest, or if something like that, where, I mean, the Manistee National Forest is super huge around here, so it's not
right.
You wouldn't necessarily narrow it down, and maybe those places are like that, but I think, I don't know about like the etiquette, the ethics, where you say, okay, well, I saw the hunting public was there and they were on all these big deer, so now we got to rush right out and take our vacation to go there.
Right. And you're talking about a real thing, because those guys came here a couple of years ago. Everybody, or a ton of people, knew right where they were. And then they shared that information. I didn't know where those guys were exactly, but a bunch of people told me. So, and then I know other people that are went there just even for the nostalgia to go hunt where like Dan Impalt, the guys were hunting, so yeah, people do it.
Well, it's kind of one of those things, and I was thinking about it when we were talking about people walking in on you in that hunt specifically where Joe killed that buck. I mean, he had that father and son like walk right in front of him right that day, and I think they got down and moved, and he ended up killing that same evening. But those people that were in there, obviously you moved, but they didn't impact his hunt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
right.
So it isn't the end of the world.
No, it's not. It's not in any capacity, and I don't think people should. It can be really frustrating if you put a bunch of work in to get to a spot and you're like emotionally invested in it, and somebody comes busting through there. It's just it sucks. But at the same point in time, it's like, man, was it the right spot? Is it like on you? Did you pick the wrong spot? Like, how'd they get there? Did you kind of foresaw that they might be there? And it can be tough. Like I'm thinking about like northern Michigan, whereas like, I'm always trying to get this place, and I realize that down here, if I frame it differently down here, for me, it's clear that there's not nearly as much distance between where people have the opportunity to hunt, because there's more people and less acreage. So, but man, I would never want to. I'm always so focused on being away from people. Like, that's why I go up far north, is because there's just such a smaller opportunity that's going to happen. And that's like one of the biggest objectives of mine of the weekend, is to like not run into people.
Oh yeah, and I feel like last year, like coming up on our gun season, we hunted the week prior to that on a super popular spot around here, and I was in bow range. I made a mistake on my setup, and I should have killed this deer, but went back in there the next day, and we had the right wind. Everything was good. It's a mile back in there, and literally you can't like turn 360 without there's a tree stand everywhere. So to try to not hunt, where there's another tree stand is impossible. But we had walked in there well before daylight, but it happened to be on a Saturday. Nobody in the parking lot, and there was a guy already in the tree out there that had to have walked either twice as far or got dropped in by a helicopter or something. Like when you talk about like, did I pick the wrong spot or how did I get in there? Like how did he get there? That was one of those true holy shit moments.
Yeah, right.
But all that to say, now with this this thought process, are there days that you avoid hunting for thinking of running into people?
No, I'm not allotted that. I'm not afforded that kind of time. I have to hunt when I can hunt. And it's usually on weekends or pre-scheduled days off that I'm just got my fingers crossed that the weather's going to work out. And if it doesn't, then I've got plan B, C, and D. So, no, I don't have, it's not like I don't hunt, on Saturday evening because I know there's going to be a bunch of people in the woods. I actually kind of like that. Maybe it's just growing up hunting, but like being in the woods like Friday after high school, knowing that there's like a football game, or on a Saturday, just knowing that there's a bunch of other guys out in the woods, and that's, getting texts from guys that are out in the woods. Like I kind of get a little bit of a good vibe about knowing that there's a bunch of other people out there doing what I'm doing. So no, I really don't. And the biggest thing is just like, I'm so dictated by what days that I can go where I don't have to be at work or have a family obligation or something in some other capacity where I can't get out there.
No, for us, like, I mean, my experience, and again, it's probably the areas that I hunt, but when opening day falls on a weekend or a Friday, and then the weekend prior to gun season is like everybody's got, and especially when you could bait, and even now that you can't bait, guys still do it, obviously. They've got their stands with wheels on them. They've got, they're just tromping around in the woods trying to do everything that they can, so that's kind of like my thought process. Like I feel like if I go in there, even though it's a great time, like for deer movement, deer activity, like I don't want anything to do with that. I would rather set that side, those days aside, to go to, the pumpkin patch or, do the cider tasting or do something with my family than to go out there and just be battling everybody.
I'll tell you, there's an alternate view on that you're reacting to what people are doing. Well, the deer that live out there are doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you can capitalize on that, in my opinion. Like, where are those people putting pressure? What are the deer likely to do when they run into those people? Are they gonna? I have always sat in the middle of the day, especially like an hour to an hour and a half, when I know like a large majority of people are coming out from the morning hunt. They're coming in to go to breakfast, right, or have coffee, or they got chores to do for the day. They're not sitting all day, right? They're hunting in the morning, and they are gonna move deer around. And for that reason, I've always sat, in for at least an hour to an hour and a half after I feel like the bulk of the traffic has come out of the woods. And I'm on multiple occasions have shot bucks that were on their feet. And, why were they on their feet? Is it because they just chose then finally to get up and do that? Did they hear people like leave the woods and it got them up from their bed and made them want to rebed? for whatever reason, the deer were up. And I've just seen that pattern repeat itself. And so, if guys are out there like running tractors, firing off ARs, I won't go because that shit's just annoying. I don't even enjoy that. I have to deal with a lot of that. Southern Michigan guys would be out there just, full paycheck on 9mm, pop, 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 pop. And to listen to that while I deer hunt is just like, not going to do this to myself. I'll spend the time with the family. So I guess in some aspects, yes, I would agree with you in doing that. But I also would say, like, sometimes if there's, pressure in the woods that isn't normally there, the deer are going to react to it in some manner. And there might be a potential opportunity to capitalize on that.
Okay. When you're talking about the tractors, one of the things that I have written down here is just something that I was curious your take on is like fence line or property boundary etiquette. So, everybody has a base map, an Onyx. They have something that tells them where everything is. And
Sure.
Especially if you're in some of the smaller pieces of public, or there's some ag around, or there's something like that. Are you going to set up right on the edge, or even with your neighbor if you have private? Like, let's say that you have, a little 10-acre piece or 5 acres or whatever. How do you feel about people setting up like right on the edge of private, right on the edge, neighbor to neighbor, back to back ladder stands, as you'll see here in Michigan a lot, on the fence lines and stuff?
Yeah, I don't know. I personally would never want to like sit anywhere where I feel like somebody has the opportunity to impact my hunt negatively because they're in such close proximity to me. So I think that distance for me is probably 100 yards in most scenarios. If somebody's 100 yards away from me, provided that their wind's not like screwing up what I'm doing, I would never sit that distance to somebody personally. So if somebody was sitting on their fence line, on their property, and I'm hunting public land, I'd respectfully be 100 yards away from that. But I'd say at that point, it's fair game. And if they're not hunting on their fence line and, for some reason, you're back in there on this piece of public land because you assume that there's bedding down here in the swamp, and those deer are going to move up to this private, to these food plots or to these ag fields, you're deer hunting and you're on public land. So I think 50 yards is respectful of a private land piece. I don't think I would feel comfortable really sitting closer than like 50 yards away from it. I wouldn't want to sit on someone's fence line. And I wouldn't want to be tempted like to even like be watching deer within killing range of, and I guess I say that 50 yards, obviously, if I'm gun hunting, I have the ability to maybe do that, but a lot of times I'm hunting such thick cover that that's not the case. 50 yards of the timber, from a tree stand is it's a bit of a shot. So that's my take on it. That's how I feel about it. I don't know how other people do feel about it, but like I said, at the end of the day, for me personally, I wouldn't want to be within range of anyone that I think could negatively impact my hunt.
Well, it seems like that seems to be the most polarizing thing. I mean, I've got one of the guys that I'm friends with. His dad hunts, public land around here, and he's turned in a lady for hunter harassment that's, driving her tractor, four-wheeler, yelling at him and all this stuff. And, he's probably 50 to 100 yards off, but it's kind of like open, so it's line of sight. And
Sure.
Unfortunately, I mean, fortunately, unfortunately, it's a blessing and a curse, to a degree. Like, these are public lands, public use lands, so she can walk over there and say whatever she wants to him in the blind, but he can't go over on her property,
Yeah, I think that's disrespectful from her part. I mean, she doesn't want him there. I mean, sorry, that's how it works. Like, you don't like it, move. I don't know what to tell you. I've been in that situation. And when I was telling you about the story earlier, the other negative thing that happened to me was, I was probably hunting 75 yards off of a fence line on public. And I was gun hunting, so I had orange on, and a guy drove tractor. He had a 2-track down the fence line, and he drove tractor down that fence line for whatever he was doing. And he saw me, and he came over there, and he kind of threw a fit. But then I basically told him, I was like, hey, I just came back in here to see how it was. I don't plan on hunting here for long, but I'm going to hunt here tonight. I'm not walking out. And, once we interacted, he kind of chilled out. But like he came at me basically like, oh, you're going to sit my fence line. I'm like, well, I'm not sitting your fence line. I'm sitting this piece of public land for this reason. And I didn't say this to him, obviously, but I'm like, the bedding is down here and they're not making it to your food plot during daylight. Like, I spent a lot of time and resources to come here to kill deer. Piss off, dude. Like, I'm on a mission and I'm in my legal means. I'm not going to have much patience for you. And so, I wasn't rude to him, but I was firm. I'm like, listen, I know I know my rights. I know that I'm within my legal means. I'm going to hunt here tonight. I'm not planning on making this a thing. So, and I told him that I knew a group of guys that lived down the road, and he's like, all right, those guys are cool. So he's like, good luck or whatever. And he just went on his way. Well, that next day I hunted there in the morning. This happened on an evening. The next morning I went in there, and at 10:30 in the morning, it might have been earlier than that. Maybe it was. Yeah, actually, I think it was. It was quite a bit earlier than that. I think it was about 8 o'clock, 8:30, maybe a good half an hour after shooting light. I killed a buck in there that morning, and got down, got that deer out, came back in the evening, hunted there, saw a bunch more deer, saw a couple real nice bull elk. It was a great spot, So I punched my tag. My brother had sat that day and he didn't see a single deer. And I was hunting with the cameraman. He had to leave that night. So I told my brother, I was like, let's go back in here. It's a ways. So it's nice. I can assure you the guy that, the private landowner, like, he typically hasn't ran into this, like, people being back in there, because it's difficult to get back in there. And my brother came with me. I said, I'll film for you. So he hunted in the morning, and about like maybe like 9:30, 10 o'clock, I hear that tractor coming, and I'm like, well, let's just hope that he's just like cruising by and maybe he doesn't. I told my brother too. I was like, dude, pull your hood over your orange hat, like, pull your camo up so we're not sticking out like a sore thumb up here and draw any attention to us, because I don't want to have a negative interaction if we can avoid it. We're not doing anything illegal. We're not trying to hide from anybody. Well, we're trying to hide from him, but not because we were doing illegal activity or anything. But so we pulled our hoods up so that our orange hats weren't just like blaring out. And of course, he had come out there to look specifically to see if I was there or if my stuff was gone or whatnot, So he saw us right away, and he came on a beeline, and he had an attitude, And by the time I got down to the tree, he had me on fire. And I basically told him, like, there is nothing that you can say to me right now that is going to stop me from coming back here and hunting here. Like, you are completely in the wrong. Like, I will call law enforcement on you. Like, this isn't cool. I'm not sitting on your fence. Like, I'm a reasonable distance off your fence. You're obviously not hunting right there, so it's not like I'm sitting out. I was angry. Plus my brother was with me and he was kind of giving my brother shit, and I'm like, no, this is not happening. And so regardless, we were getting ready to get down anyways. And now he had come over here and made this big scene. So it was like, our hunt's done, right? Like he burned our hunt out for that morning, and equally, had me worked up. So, but we got down, we packed our stuff up. We just had a couple like lone wolf hang-ons, and one set of sticks and 2 lone wolf hang-ons. And we got out of there, and I did not hunt back in there again that year. I went back in there in the middle of the winter the next year, and he put a ladder stand up, a big double ladder stand right in the tree that we were hanging in. So I was like, all right, I guarantee they're not sitting there. They just put that up like as a show of force, like, hey, this is our spot, maybe they do hunt there. It would make sense. It's the best spot. As I was saying about like not tipping anybody off to like, why is he sitting there? Those guys were not sitting that tree, and for that reason they didn't kill that buck that day, and I did, but now they know about that tree. So, but if they're not going out to that spot, I'm not too worried about it. And I do kind of believe that they are box blind hunters on their food plots up on their private land, and that they just put that there to basically detour us from hunting back in there. But I'm going to make sure that I go to the extent in the future to like, I'm not going to go on a Bluebird Sunday afternoon and sit back there, because I feel like those guys are going to be out and about. I don't want any chance for a confrontation. Do not want that. But at the same point, that is one, because of the way that it lays out, right? There's a swamp, big cedar swamp. And then there's a badass little staging area where the deer come up from the swamp. And then as soon as it gets dark, they go and cross over this guy's fence line, walk up his 2-track, walk through his timber, and they go to these nice manicured food plots in northern Michigan. It is a bomb spot. And I'm completely within my legal rights to go out there and hunt. So I don't feel any kind of like moral thing like I'm in the wrong. I understand that it's frustrating for him. I don't disagree with that, but I'm also not like, out there setting up a pop-up blind, staking my claim. But I'm going to come in and out of there, and I'm going to deer hunt. And but I'm going to pick my days, and I'm going to pick my travel times. You know what I mean? So that like there's just as little chance as possible that I ever have, because I don't want a negative interaction with my deer hunting. You know what I mean? That guy walking around out there making noise, anything like that is obviously going to destroy my hunt, so I just go somewhere else. But there's obviously days where the weather is like, yeah, there's not going to be a guy that's a box blind hunter that's going to be coming out in these woods, this part of the woods today for any reason. So,
and another thing that on that spot, that situation lays out poorly for, and unfortunately for the public land hunter, and especially you having history with the guys, like, if you're bow hunting and you shoot something and it runs on that guy's property, I can't imagine the interaction that you would have.
I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't bow hunt that spot. That's a gun hunting spot for me. And you're 100% right on that.
Yeah.
And with gun hunting, I mean, provided you put a good, your shot is good. Typically I've never had a deer go more than 100 yards. So yeah, there is that opportunity. If you shot a deer there and it got on his property, not going to go over well. But typically the way that the deer are traveling, like it would seem super awkward. Um, so anyways, yeah, in that situation, it could happen and it would be bad and you wouldn't want that. So,
Yeah. And I don't know. I guess, I know we're going to have to wrap this up. You're burning the candle at all the ends. You're from the middle at this point. But like, I guess, what would you say to like, the basis of this podcast for new guys, as they encounter somebody in the parking lot, as they're walking out and they encounter somebody in the woods, is it, that bold, where everybody likes to say, it's public land, man. I can hunt wherever I want to, like piss off. Or, I mean, I guess from, your perspective, having been in these situations,
I've been on both sides of it so many times.
So how do you think, like, what would be your recommendation for new guys?
I want to mention too that I've always dealt with trespassing on our private property that I grew up hunting. Like I've had equipment stolen, equipment destroyed, caught guys hanging stands. I've always dealt with poaching. And I think like going on someone's private property is completely inexcusable. And if your objective ever was to like negatively impact someone that is like hunting on private land, that it's like a shit move. And I wouldn't want to be in that shoes. When I'm talking about, I am dead serious when I say like, when I go into this spot, I'm going there because I have no thought that these guys are going to kill any deer that I'm going to see, that I'm going to be coming in here to target, because there's just no way that these deer during daylight are going out there when they can be here. It just makes too much sense. And if those guys were hunting there, I wouldn't encroach on it, but they're not, I'm like, and it's tough, man, to hunt public land. So you got to take every opportunity that you possibly can. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, I mean, like when these guys get out of the parking lot and get out of the truck in the morning, and there's other guys in the parking lot, or they're walking out to their stand and somebody flashes them with the light,
right.
They're walking out, maybe, they got out of work late, but they want to hunt the spot, and then, lo and behold, somebody whistles at them. Like, what in your mind is like the way that you would teach your son to interact in that situation?
Just like basically any other interaction, you want to be as respectful to that person as possible and engage in a conversation and try to communicate and see what everybody's looking to get out of the situation and figure out what works best for you. And maybe you have an objective and you find out what their objective is, and maybe your guys' objectives don't cross paths whatsoever. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm going, I maybe going this way or whatever. Or he says, I'm hunting across the street. You're like, oh, cool. I'm not, so it's an opportunity to meet another hunter. Maybe it's somebody local and you guys shake hands. Hey, hey, I'm Kevin, I'm Todd, whatever. Hey, nice to meet you. Hey, here's my phone number. If you shoot one, we can help you. You know what I mean? And he says, hey, yeah, cool. My buddy's got a tracking dog. So, if you get into a bad spot too, I know a tracking dog. I mean, you're silly if you're not taking advantage of the opportunity to have a conversation with somebody out there. That can be a positive thing, I think. If you're looking for a negative conversation and you go into it in that capacity with that ego and that attitude, that's probably what you'll get. Like the situation that I described, that guy was rude. He didn't come over there to ask like my side of the story. He just came over there to demand that I bought into his, and I didn't. And he was super disrespectful in doing so. So he kind of caused the event to go in that direction, and it didn't have to. So I guess that would be my advice: is just do your best to communicate and figure out what you guys each want out of the situation. And if it sounds like somebody's going to get the shit end of the stick, maybe just walk away from it. Like don't take it too seriously, right? Things happen for a reason. So, I don't know, maybe people are more, I'm kind of a control freak, but at some point in time too, I'm also like, all right, this happened for a reason. Let's just roll with it. Like rolling with a situation, the people that can do that are like, they're a different personality that people that can't roll with the situation, is like, this happened. Like Jocko Willink had that thing called good, like broke my leg, good, got stabbed in the heart, good, like the craziest shit ever that no one would agree is good. And he's looking at it with like through a positive lens, So if you can bring that mentality into it,
good.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. You said it.
Yeah. No, man, I really appreciate it. And I think, as we're coming up on, Michigan's opener here, and, there's going to be a lot of guys headed out into the woods, and a lot of states are open right now. It's just always, beneficial to have these sort of conversations before you're in the situation and you are all, geeked up or whatever.
Absolutely, dude. Calmer heads do prevail. And I totally understand if someone's disrespectful to you, I don't have much tolerance for that. I have zero tolerance for it, actually. I can't stand that shit. So you can get put in a bad spot, if someone's disrespectful and is not on the same page as you. It can be a shit situation, and at that point, I'll just walk away, right? Get your 2 cents in and get out of there. So, yeah. But the best thing is to just keep positive mindset and move forward. It's probably not that big of a deal, right?
Yeah. There's always bigger deer. There's always other spots. There's always going to be someone who, there's fucking the armchair quarterback who's got the answer to everything. Not even worth it.
If you let negative things like that kind of attach to what you're doing, it won't be fun, because now you've got this in your head, like, last time I won. If you think that the situation has an opportunity to go bad, like you're just, maybe I'll go to the beer and get shit faced, or go to the bar and watch a football game, and I'm not even gonna hunt this afternoon because I'm just gonna reward myself with a little bit of a day off. You know what I mean? And so whatever you got to do to kind of make it not let it piss you off and get to you, I suppose.
Yes, we usually close these out with what's your bow setup, and we'll get there in just a second. But I'm going to kind of go one further. Just because we are talking about, getting out into the woods and moving around. What's your mobile setup you're hunting with this year?
I'll probably do a lot of hunting sitting on the ground, to be honest with you. A lot of just up against a tree, a whole lot of that. And then I'll probably also be doing a whole lot of sitting in. I got a Novix Hilo now. And we'll see as the season gets rolling. I have 4 of their double step mini sticks, which are really nice. But you lose some height with them versus 4 traditional full length sticks. So I'm not exactly certain. They're a little bit lighter. I don't necessarily care about that. But they are a more comfortable stick to climb than the single. And they pack real nice, and they climb real nice. Like they really bite into the tree good. They're a nice stick. So I'm not sure, as the season gets rolling, I'll kind of figure out what I'm going to be using with those. And then I have a trophy line covert saddle that I've been messing around with. And then I just got Latitude. Their Method too is a 2-panel saddle. I'm not sure if you're from,
Oh yeah.
if you, I sat in that at the Woods and Water Show, and I was like, oh, dude, you guys are onto something here. Like this is a better design and more comfortable than other things that I've sat in. So I'm gonna give that thing a little bit of a whirl here. I literally just got that last week, so
Yeah,
I got a couple different things going on, man.
yeah, I don't necessarily care for the 2-panel saddles, just because their first version, they had some clips and stuff like that. It was more comfortable, but it was a little bit cumbersome, like
Sure.
pulling it out of your tote and then it was twisted up or something like that. And even like John Eberhart saddles the same way for most people. You know, if you talk to John, it's the easiest thing in the world, but he's been using it for 40 years. But their new one with those magnets, it is super comfortable and super slick.
That's what I thought too. No metal on the whole thing, which is super smart. Obviously, like after you see that, it's like, well, that makes sense, and the way that they did it is super effective. So yeah, and they're built right here in Michigan, which is a big deal for me. I'm a shop local guy, so those guys were cool. Met them last weekend at the Woods and Water Show, liked their product, and picked up one of those as well. So between that and the Trophy Line Covert, which is also a really comfortable saddle, I got a lot of things that I'm going to be experimenting here with through the course of this season. You know, I'm thinking that at the end of this deer hunting season, I'll have a better idea of what I liked about certain setups and why I would choose differently moving forward. And I'm sure there's a couple things I'm just going to absolutely fall in love with, you know?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a bow hunting, mobile hunting podcast or whatever if we didn't say just another tool in the toolbox, right? You got a lot of tools.
I saw a funny meme yesterday. It was a cop was arresting a guy and putting him in handcuffs. And what he said, the cop said, there was a caption. The cop says, you have the right to remain silent. And then the caption from the guy was, I'm a saddle hunter.
Yeah.
Like, it's hilarious.
Yeah. So what do you're, good friends I think that'd be a good thing with some of the prime guys, like live in your neighborhood or whatever. So what bow is it that you're shooting and your arrows and all that setup?
So I'm shooting a Prime Nexus 34-inch axle to axle, and it is 65 pounds at 28-inch draw, and it's in their green riser, green limbs, and then everything else is just black. There's not a single color on the bow. Titanium archery product, front and back bar. HHA single pin, Tetra, Hamskea, Trinity, Hunter, drop away, driving that off the bottom cam. And then I got a thumb release and a wrist rocket. I'll probably run the thumb release and till for the earlier part of the season when the weather's decent and I don't have to have heavier gloves on. And then as I get into heavier gloves, I'll probably run that wrist rocket. We'll see. Might bounce back and forth, but I'd probably be hunting with both of those releases. And then as far as my Aero Build, I'm shooting a day 6 gear 350 with a 50 grain concentric 2-piece component on the front end of that arrow. And then I actually just all last week shot broadheads. I shot every broadhead I had here in the studio. So I shot standard Montech 100 grain, the Montech M3 100 grain. That's their solid Montech. The G5 Striker, which is the V2, which I think is like 1.25 inch, 3-blade, replaceable blade. I shot their dead meat ballistic point, and then I shot the day 6 gear Evo X's, which are the 125 grain bigger cut and the 100 grain Evo standard Evo. I shot the shit. I mean, I destroyed a new block target last week, basically, shooting broadheads. It was kind of sad, but at the same point in time, like dude, I'm tuning these broadheads and I want to get everything perfect. And I went back and forth a couple different times on but I settled in on the Montec M3, the new solid one. It took me a little bit of additional monkeying to tune that broadhead versus the vented Montec. The vented Montec I could pretty much just screw on, and that thing's gonna, I might have to move my rest to the left like 3 inches or something, but those things are pretty much going to do what my field points do. Whereas with a solid broadhead, you have much more surface area, and it's going to do more with wind than a vented broadhead, in my experience. So it took me a little bit more. I had to bump my rest just a little bit, move my sight a little bit more than what I typically do, and then actually had to slow my bow down a little bit. I took 2 full turns off of my limbs. I actually don't even know what my bow is at right now. I'm going to guess it's probably, well, it's a 65-pound bow, but it came in on the scale at like 66 and a half. So it's probably like 63, maybe something like that right now, 62. I don't know exactly, but that was the money maker right there, just slowing that thing down just a little bit. And I'm in a 4-inch box at 40 yards with my broadhead now. So
awesome. That sounds like a pretty solid setup.
Dude, you cannot beat the quietness, in my opinion, of a solid broadhead over a vented broadhead. And that's why I went through that extra, because I shot the solid ones. And even though my groups weren't as tight at first, they were so much quieter. Like when I put the regular Montex back on, they're like, and I'm like, oh, I'm so not into that. Like, it just drives me crazy to be making my bow louder. You know what I mean? So, but I don't have that issue with a unvented broadhead, and for that reason, I'll go that little bit of extra step. And so I'm jacked. Like the way the bow is shooting with that arrow and that broadhead setup. Like I'm so confident that it would have to be completely on me to screw up on a deer. My archery equipment is set up and ready to kill.
Awesome. Well, that's what we need for this. This podcast will come out on Wednesday. So for the weekend following, I mean, it sounds like you're all set up.
Dude, I'm so jacked up. Like, that's right around the corner, man. I can't believe it.
Yeah, this morning it felt like Halloween to me, and Halloween here in Michigan is like a little bit rainy, nice and cool, just, overcast. Like it had the feeling.
Yeah, you're very right about that. Last week felt like summer, and this week felt like or a couple days ago felt like summer, and today felt like late October shitty day.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's the best days for me to be in the woods. I'm sure you feel the same way.
Oh my gosh, a light rain like today after, pouring rain, having high winds yesterday. Dude, I'm sure today was a good deer movement day. And there's some pretty good looking weather in the extended forecast. I won't be going up north for opening weekend. I'll be hunting down here, trying to get out Friday and Saturday after work. Want to get a couple of antlerless tags filled right away. Potentially get a first crack at a buck that's, hitting some food that he hasn't been disrupted yet. So that's always on the table. And then I think the following weekend I'm taking off, and we're going to go do like a little traditional archery tent camp up in the state forest of northern Michigan. There's a reasonable group of the podcast crew's going, and a couple of guys from Prime are going, and we're going to go do like a little tent camp and see if we can't fill a couple deer tags here the weekend after, which is typically about the peak colors up there. and some maple leaves are starting to hit the ground. And I don't know, there's probably not too good of a chance that there would be any white oak acorns on the ground yet. But if there's any apple trees that have apples, I'm sure there'll still be some remnants of that maybe going on. So a lot of food sources changing that weekend. I know you could find yourself around a conversation of guys saying that that's the lull, and not going to be too excited about that. And there's days that I might agree, depending on what the weather's doing and everything else. But I'm pretty jacked up actually about getting up there, trying to find maybe potentially some white oaks that still have a few acorns that are late and coming down, and get on those and get on some deer that are hitting some food, especially late in the morning for whatever reason. In that time window up there, I've always done real good on seeing deer. So
that whole thing just sounds freaking awesome. So where can people follow along to hear that and help bump you up those next 3 or 4 spots to put you into the top 10? Where can they follow?
First of all, man, I really appreciate the conversation tonight. It's always enjoyable to talk to you. And I honestly should have been sitting here editing my podcast, but I decided that I'd rather just sit here and talk deer hunting with you. So, but thank you for having me on. And then people can go to our website. It's deerhunterpodcast.com. And there's links on there to basically find wherever you'd listen to podcasts, Apple or Spotify, or iTunes, obviously for Apple users, and then for Android users, Spotify works as well. Google Podcast is super popular now. You just type in Deer Hunter Podcast in Google, and it should come up in Google Podcasts. So all those places that you listen to podcasts. And then we've got a couple films on our YouTube page and some other random content on there. We don't really publish much on there, but there is a reasonable catalog on there as well. So
awesome, Kevin. I really appreciate the time. I know you're busy and overworked and underpaid and all the things. So I'll let you get over to it, but I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. Good luck to everybody this year.
For sure.